Hey guys, so this video is going to we're going to go through this lead magnet where we are absolutely focused on making sure that we are mastering that craft of cold calling in 2025. First thing first, right off the bat, the message really that I want to convey across is that cold calling isn't dead in and as much as we can see it on LinkedIn or any kind of social media or B2B platform where, say cold calling is dead because of all of these, different reason, it is still one of the best ways to get directly within your prospect. Cold calling isn't dead, but it has evolved, right? And for you to get maximum success, you are going to need to more or less follow the steps that I am going to lay out. And we look, I aim to make this as practical as possible in regards to the strategies. So completely, cut across the grass, no BS strategies that actually work, and I have also implemented myself. Right. First thing first, when it comes to any strategy or any plan, we need to make sure that we prep well. We want to make sure that we're laying the foundations, right? And setting ourselves up from success starts before we even you know pick up the phone, right? That is literally making sure that we are adopting the right mindset, right? And what I mean by this is a lot of us will go into the mindset of wanting to close at all cost, right? We want to approach calls with curiosity, in terms of instead of like pressuring to sell at all times. That what our goal is really in a cold call is actually most of the time it's going to be a first introduction. So all you actually want to do is just open dialogue, and not aim to close a deal on the spot, right? And if you're using objections as more or less opportunities to learn, because let's just say you are just doing more research within that, that TAM or that within that ICP, within understanding who your champion is, understanding what their pain points are, understanding who's using your competitors and why. We always want to keep, that positive mindset that everything is happening for our own good, right? And each call is more or less a step towards improvement, right? Step two in terms of our prep is obviously now we've got our mindset kind of locked in. We really want to take that unselling mindset where we are, not looking to pressure sell, but actually to solve problems, right? We then need to make sure that we are gathering context on the prospects that we are looking to dial into, right? Because the worst cold calls are the ones where we've just got a list and we've got a list of people, we've got a product that we sell, and then we're calling this list of people without knowing anything about them, right? That's where we use tools like Clay, to make sure that we're uncovering the job titles, anything, any potential signal that we can use, or we see that it deems fit with the potential offer that we are about to convey across, making sure that we're researching the LinkedIn activities, um, again, just to make sure that we have done our research on the person. So the person, in as much as that they are in a list of people that we're cold calling, they feel and where they are more or less, you know, uh, researched upon, and we feel like we're actually having more of a conversation with someone that has done their homework, right? And step three is we want to make sure that we're then framing our hypothesis, right? This literally means identifying potential challenges your prospects might face, right? Again, based upon the industry, the roles, in like company size. So even if we are selling and cold calling with a product that is very general and has lots of different ICPs, making sure that you can properly segment your list. In lieu with potentially the value proposition that this products that you're selling can do for that specific ICP, right? That's going to allow you to have a lot more success when it comes to convey that message across, actually having meaningful conversations and getting more meetings, booked. You know, um, Again, and I said here, frame the questions, that help or confirm those challenges, or help or confirms help confirm or challenge these assumptions. So again, just having things, many teams in the industry find yada 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 takes longer than expected. How are you addressing that? You're not telling them that they're struggling. You're not telling them that they're winning. You're actually just wanting to hear more about how they are more or less dealing with the situation, and then in lieu with the response that you get back, that is what will will signify probably the next step of how you take that cold call, right? And now making sure we're now obviously going deeper within the actual aspect of, you know, doing the cold call, right? So first, we want to make sure that we're drafting a permission based opener, right? You're calling someone randomly. You can't just go in straight into a pitch. You actually need their permission so that you can speak to them, believe it or not. And for especially for calling, mobile numbers, which people can hold true to be really personal and all the other things, you aren't most of the times aren't going to get anywhere without actually asking for permission. But where you can actually add, where you can actually have a successful permission opener, because what I'm seeing now is a lot of the things we say, oh, these are permission openers and they're pattern interrupts, but everyone's doing it, so it's not really a pattern interrupt anymore because everyone is doing it, right? So it's becoming expectant. How you can you take this to the next level is actually about adding context to your permission based opener, and that's again using it could be a tool like Clay where you can then use all of the data that you get from the enrichment, and say something like, hi, John, this is Festus from Breakcold. I noticed that you're actively using Instantly, and also quite active on LinkedIn. I know your time is valuable. Like, do you have 30 seconds for me to explain why I'm calling? That's obviously just off the bat. We can obviously improve that as we go and have just improve the messaging. But the whole point is to actually add a bit of context, add a bit of curiosity, add a bit of intrigue into, and also tell them technically why you're calling without showing all your cards, and just ask for like a specific time, minute time for you to explain why you're calling, and even potentially even before the call, you can even prime the prospect, engaging with their link social media post, interacting with the content, before the call. Because what this can do is, like, if I say I'm Festus and Festus has been liking your posts and commenting and things like that, that name potentially may be quite familiar. It may ring a bell. It just a bridge, just again break down kind of any bit of friction that we can possibly break down, and last but not least, we want to make sure that we are preparing for those common scenarios. So what I'd love to do is actually make a list of my objections that I potentially can get, so to make sure that they're concise and empathetic, and just constantly practice, and the best way to do that is, let's pick up the phone more, right? In terms of like our essential tools really for our cold calling workflow, I've touched upon a couple. Number one being Clear, where we can then really hone in and perfect our list building, and also the data enrichment, so that in and as much as we use Clay for personalization with cold email, where I think people are really missing, where Clay can be even more powerful, it's actually in calling. By me taking all the information that I need and enriching this piece of data, I know so much more about my prospect that when I'm calling them, it's not really that cold anymore, because I have information about them that they kind of like bridge kind of burns the ice, a tiny bit, kind of acts as an icebreaker really. And obviously, we need a dialer, so I just put Aircall here. It is a cloud-based phone system. It has lots of integrations with different tools and CRMs and everything else. So that's going to be probably the one most of us are going to be able to use, depending on what current tech stack that we have. And last but not least, for our CRM, where we are then going to hold and continue to nurture. As I said, we want to make sure that even like before we call, potentially we are actually engaging with content. If you send an email, we've done this, we've done that. Like we want to stay top of mind at all times. Breakcold is the best CRM to do that, because again, this is the more modern way of selling. When it comes down to structuring our conversations, right? Again, it's not about pitching, right? It's actually about starting a meaningful conversation. And what I'll do in here, this Miro flowchart that I've created, there's also going to be a video here where I'll go in depth into the actual video, and you'll be able to access that also just by clicking. Hey guys, so this video is all about our more or less logic board, and like kind of logical steps and workflows that we can take to get our end goal, which in our case is making sure that we invite that prospect in towards the next step. So first thing first, we always start with our permission-based opener, um, and this is either going to be declined no matter how good your opener is. No matter how much research goes into it, it could simply be declined, right? So off the bat, we're most likely going to be objection handling, and once we objection handle, we then want to transition that prospect back into kind of that transition gently phase where we are calling out the elephant in the room, um, aiming to reduce friction by stating the obvious, and also giving them the opportunity to head out, but also have more of dialogue, right? And then from there, you are now given the opportunity to let's say take that first step into potentially digging deeper in regards to potential pains and everything else. You then have the opportunity then to explore their current state, right? And if within exploring the current state, if you find that they have a knowledge or value gap, then we can illuminate that potential problem that we see within that gap and what that may mean for their business, or and so on and so forth, and then invite them into the next step, which is potentially having a further conversation, a discovery call, a demo, and so on and so forth, to identify, or to to speak about that problem and identify that problem even deeper. Most of the times prospects aren't going to be you know open, completely open, with a stranger on the phone. That's why obviously the steps before is to build some familiarity, right? But however, um, that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to just openly tell you everything, single deep pain points and everything else, right? So if you find that they don't have a knowledge, they, from what they initially say, there's not a real knowledge of value gap there, because it may just be just lack of information, or it may just be quite legitimate. The best way to find that out is just by asking further qualifying questions, right? So by asking further qualifying questions, you then actually get to confirm if this is just a prospect being difficult to have a conversation with and they're just hiding stuff, which you can then continue to ask more further qualifying questions, to really get to the meat and bones of everything, or you can just then confirm they're just not for you. So in asking deeper, did you identify a potential gap deeper down? No. Okay, then we'll disqualify and more or less end the call. If in part of the disqualification you find that the reason why you can't really get any deeper is because that person is not your champion. That means they don't really know the ins and outs of the role that you want your ICP to have in, not really understanding the pain points and stuff like that. Then it will be smart to then ask for a referral, right? But if you find that deeper down that you did identify a potential gap, then what we want to do is then illuminate the potential problem that could arise from that gap, right? And how our solution can help to bridge that gap in itself, and then from there invite them into the next step, which is again just a further conversation. First thing first, in terms of the structure, I've already touched upon it just briefly, but we want to make sure that we're opening with permission. We want to be respectful and just engaging, and also respectful of their time. And then as I said, we want to then add a bit of like contextual enrichment, and contextual signals in towards that opener to increase intrigue, and also reduce that kind of friction, and the friction that you get from having a stranger reach out to you. If a stranger knows more about you, then I'm a bit more intrigued. So it can be something like hi John, this is Festus from Breakcold. I noticed that you guys recently raised in your Series B. I know your time is valuable. Do you have a moment just to explain why I'm reaching out? Very simple, right? And then what you want to do from there is just transition gently in regards to what response you get. So it could be, most of the time, as we know, we're mostly going to get rejection more than we get anything else, right? So it could literally be like, hey, like, I'm not interested, or hey, I'm not, I haven't got time right now, or I'm in a meeting, right? If I'm not interested, or any of those objections, what you refer to your objection handling section. So on the fly, most of the time someone says they're not interested if they don't even actually know what you're calling them for. What, if you don't even know if you're trying to sell to them anything, you simply ask, like, are you saying, are you not interested because this is a cold call, um or you just don't have time to hear what I'm about to say, or why I'm called, or you don't have time to hear what I'm about, or why I'm about to call you, right? Um, and all that does is then you ask a question and it continues the conversation, right? And then you can then handle the conversation. You can then handle the conversation further on in regards to the response that you get, right? And what you want to do is then transition them gently into the second section, right? So you want to call the elephant in the room, right? 9 times out of 10, the prospect is already going to have a solution in place. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be not really difficult, but very unique for a prospect not to already have a solution in place. So we want to acknowledge that, so that we can firstly take again, try and take back as much friction as possible. Because at the end of the day, you can't force someone to buy from you. What you can do is actually just identify potential a knowledge gap, potential a pain gap, that the current tool isn't actually fulfilling right now, right? So it can just be like acknowledging the expertise and just the current effort. It seems like you've already got a solid system in place for your CRM, or you can say something like, I'll look, John, I'll be very, very silly to assume that you currently don't already have a CRM in place, especially with the size of your sales team, or with the amount of funding that you received, right? Can I just ask, with with your current CRM, are you having the opportunity to also really do some more multi-channel campaigns with your reps, or are your reps being or doing more multi-channel outreach? You know, something that opens dialogue, right? And obviously, this is in the context of Breakcold, for example. And then from there, you want to then explore their current state. So now that we you've gone deeper into the conversation, we then want to frame specific relatable questions. So John, uh, now that obviously you just said that your reps are also quite heavy on LinkedIn, and that's you guys are also doing emailing and everything else with the calling, right? When 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 managing prospects, are you able to see all the conversations that you're having with them, from all of these different means of outreach, you know and then, because what that does is then what we want to signify is actually just the potential gap, or inefficiencies in their current system. Then from there, we would then want to illuminate that potential challenge, and it could be like, just again referring to how other ICPs um, have have fixed that potential problem that they have, which in this case maybe like the visibility for all of the conversations, for all the multi-channel conversations that they're having. Their current CRM isn't actually doing showing that, and they don't have these different functions with LinkedIn and all the important tools that they are using in terms of forms of communication that they are using in one place. And then we want to illuminate that potential challenge, and then invite them onto more or less the next step. And it could just be like just referring to previous points in the conversation. It sounds like we might actually be. Well, it sounds like from what you've mentioned here, we might be able to help simplify. You know, you having that single pane view, and be able to effectively track all of your leads and all of the conversations, and the quality of the conversations that your reps are having, which is going to help you to have better training of the reps, but also helps them to keep accountable. And also, it's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to ensure that no lead kind of like drops out of the bucket, because data and conversations are in so many different channels, and the rep has to then potentially has to go sift through so many different tabs that they may forget. Right? Would it make sense for us to potentially schedule a 20-minute chat later this week? You know, You can also provide two specific options, just to make it easier for the decision maker. But normally, especially with people they're calling into, they're quite busy. So just giving them like, hey, how does this, what availability do you have like this week? And then make sure that you have your calendar open, so that you can book them in on the call, and also get them to accept the meeting, the call, on the spot. And also, as we go further down, obviously you have given, just an example, script in itself, and then we then obviously naturally in cold calling and anything that we do sales, you are handling loads of objections. So my framework, right, is we want to make sure that instead of giving you, this is a list of objections and this is how I respond with it. I want to give you a framework so that, you can then actually create your own responses, that are effective to your own specific use case. So we want to, firstly acknowledge their concern. Someone said something to you. You want to show that you have listened, right? So you want to show empathy. Understand that's like, that's something that many people mention. Yeah, I totally understand that cost is an issue, right now. And then you want to dig deeper, right? You want to actually get clarity, because most of the times objections don't really, they're not really giving you the real reason as to why, as to why they're saying no. So you want to ask for more clarity. So when you say it's not the right time, is it like due to like just the bandwidth budget, or something else? Then I'm like, okay, then if it's budget, then I'm like, okay, then I can handle that objection, the budget objection. And then what I do from that is like, yeah, again, acknowledge the concern, then also, ask more questions about the budget, potentially, be like, hey, um, with the budget right now, and from obviously the conversation we've had, we've seen that potentially there's like so many, uh, um, savings in your operational cost. Would this not be something worthwhile potentially, exploring, so that when new budget does come, you know exactly how you know the decisions that, to make, to firstly make sure that you are a lot more efficient from an operational cost perspective, whilst also maximizing your team's productivity. Um, and obviously next steps from there, as I kind of jumped the gun there, it's just basically just to provide more context, or like fill the knowledge gaps, right? And then propose that next step, which is like, would it make sense to actually just have a call sometime next week, just for you to have a deeper understanding of the product, and then so that when it does come to making a decision, you are well versed, in knowing what products are there on the market, so that you can be quicker to make a decision also. Right. And I've just given some example tips in here in regards to like just the most common, objections that we get on cold calls. And last but not least, it's just again just advanced tips to just elevate your calls, right? So you want to firstly ask specific questions. So you again using multiple choice, but making it very relevant to what the prospect is, what the prospect cares about, what they're speaking, what they said previously, and what the whole tone and the context of the cold call is. Right, so are you using like tool A or tool B? So knowing that you actually know about the industry. Well, embrace silence. Well, after asking a question, pause. They say the first person to speak to normally loses the deal. So just let that silence linger, just to encourage the prospect to share more, right? And in regards to like, really at optimal times, like see, try not to call when potentially someone it's 3 a.m. and someone might be asleep, or, someone's not at work anymore, so you won't be calling numbers. Um, Obviously this is common sense, right? At times that potentially people are not going to be picking up, or not at work on, or not picking up calls. And after each call, we want to make sure that we want to actually see what went well and what didn't. Right, and just use those notes today and continue to refine your approach. If that's refining your opener more, if that is potentially not, pushing more on an objection, we want to make sure that we are actively, constantly, reviewing and getting better and getting better. And last but not least, we want to make sure we are staying detached from the outcome. Right, we want to completely detach from the outcome, because firstly, as Josh Braun says, prospects, if you are completely attached, prospects can literally smell your commission breath. Right, they already don't trust salespeople. So if you're coming across as attached, you're also coming across as desperate, and that completely ruins the whole view, the whole kind of comfortability that a prospect may have to share more information with you and potentially build a good relationship with you. But yeah, so look, cold calling isn't dead. There may just be like, potentially more more care that needs to be put in place when we're actually reaching out to prospects instead of just having a list and just dialing your life away. Because again, these prospects are going to have lots of people cold calling them. Like, you want to be able to stand out, and the best way to stand out is to show me you know me. As Sam McKenna says. So show your prospects that you know them, because most other people aren't gonna know anything about them. They just want to sell their products. Voicemail. Hey Mustafa, it's Festus from Breakcold. How are you doing today? Festus from Breakcold. Probably haven't spoken before, so this call is kind of cold. But I just saw that you were into modern tools like Lemnis, Smartly and Instantly. So I just decided to reach out. Have you got about 32 seconds just to find out what I'm calling? Okay, really. Yeah, yeah, of course. Just obviously before, yeah, I will do. Just before I do, just to make sure it's like even worth your while. Um, have you got just about more or less just 10 seconds, literally, just to see why I'm calling, just to see if it even makes sense to email you? It's obviously with you being somewhat active on LinkedIn. Would you also say your potential customers are also active there, or are you reaching out to them like via email and other means? Okay. So with okay, yeah, I totally understand that. And are you actively using that for to connect with other kind of professionals in academia or okay? No, and with what you're currently doing with your customers and also with connecting with other academia, obviously I'm only going to imagine that that's all going to be you're already tracking all of that into your CRM, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, totally. I'd be naive not to assume that you're not kind of already up to date with everything, right? Um, with obviously using LinkedIn to connect with other academia, and with the current setup that you've got in terms of like automations, everything else, right, with your CRM, right? When you are doing this, are you able to more or less sync your LinkedIn and other social conversations that you could be having on other platforms to like the lead in like one single pane view? Okay, no, I totally understand. No worries. Cheers. Thank you. Bye bye. He's not a good fit. He doesn't really use LinkedIn for like business. He just connects with other professionals basically. Try to dig a bit deeper to see if there's a connection there, but just not completely relevant.